Hi, everybody. Thought I'd say a few words about Chapter 10 and migration. Just a quick thought before we begin. Several of you have said, or were checking in with me and wanting to know how I'm doing. I'm actually doing okay. The wife and I are going for bike rides and walks. We're talking more with our cats. Not going too stir crazy, but just hanging in there. But which reminds me, I've been trying to check in with the class. So if anything's up, please get back to me. Let me know how you're doing. Not only just with the course, but in general. I really felt that before break, our class was bonding as a group. So just kind of get back to me. Let me know how you folks are doing as well. So we're going to have our test coming up soon. And the last thing I want to do is record a few lectures on migration. This is going to be the first of those lectures. And whoops, that should be chapter 10. My mistake. One day I will get a slide deck that is actually accurate, but so it goes. 11. We'll round off. We'll call it chapter 10. Um, when we look at migration, one of the things that we see is that really it's a lot like that decision to invest in human capital. People that are considering migrating look at what is the benefit of migrating. In other words, if I leave my home, what do I gain? Now, what you gain can clearly be something in terms of money, but there are other reasons as well. We celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States. We talk about the pilgrims who came to the United States. And the pilgrims were coming to the new land. It wasn't the United States yet. The pilgrims were coming to escape religious persecution. They wanted to be able to practice their religion the way they wanted. So clearly, people can come for reasons aside from just economic ones. Last summer, I was in the Greek island of Lesbos as part of a GLCA program studying refugees. And we saw people that had come from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, that were migrating, trying to get out of their home countries just because it wasn't safe there. There was a war going on. My own relatives, left Eastern Europe to escape religious persecution. So there can be a wide range of reasons why people migrate. Now, people compare this to the benefit of staying. There's the idea of an opportunity cost. What do you give up when you leave? If it turns out the benefits of staying exceed the benefits of migrating, then you're going to stay. Now, the benefits of staying would include any job you might have, being with your family, although perhaps migrating can be considered, a benefit because you get away from your family. But I've been in rural villages in Mexico where there might be 4 teenagers and no movie theaters or any recreational opportunities. So coming to LA or San Diego certainly seems a lot more attractive than staying back in the home village. But for a lot of people, staying certainly has benefits. The benefits being you get to be with friends and family. Now, even if it turns out the benefits of migrating exceed the benefits of staying, you have to consider the cost of migrating. Sometimes to come to the United States, if you're going to cross the border from Mexico, you have to get a guide. The term for that is a coyote, somebody you pay. When I first started studying migration about 10, 15 years ago, a coyote cost about $300 to $500. Today it's about $5,000. So the cost of migrating can be substantial. It's also dangerous. It's not easy to cross the desert. I've seen crosses where people have died trying to cross the desert into the United States. So, if you want to look at it in terms similar to like human capital, people are making a decision. For any year, they're looking at the benefit of migrating compared to the benefit of staying, and they have to discount that going into the future. So if somebody plans to work for 20 or 30 years, they're making this decision. Should I leave home based on not only the current year, but future years? And this also has to be compared to the cost of moving, the cost of migrating. Now, one of the things that affects the whole, idea, the whole equation of whether or not to move or not, is an idea that economists have borrowed from sociologists, the idea of social capital. This is a network of family, friends, and townspeople in the area you're migrating to. They help you get started. So these are the people that will tell you, hey, here's where the jobs are. Yeah, you can crash on my couch for a few weeks until you find a job. Here's where the bus routes are. Hey, don't go to that McDonald's. That's where La Migra, the immigration services, takes their coffee breaks. So people tend to go where they have either family, friends, or townspeople already living. So what you'll find is, from Mexico to the United States, people from, let's say Guanajuato, a state in Mexico, tend to come to Ohio. Why? Because people from Guanajuato earlier came to Ohio. People from Jalisco tend to come to Detroit, where I grew up. So there are these networks where people go. You tend to go where there are people that you know. One of the things to understand about migration is that it's a decision that can be made again and again. It's circulatory. In other words, people go, they migrate, they leave, but then they might return back to their home country. For example, sometimes people want to open a business. They want to get married. They need money for their parents' operation. So they'll go, they'll work in the United States, and they'll make a lot of money. And then once the goal is met, they will return back to where they came from. Not all immigration is permanent. So, for example, it used to be in the past, for every 2 Mexicans that came to the United States, 1 would return. Nowadays, things have gotten a little bit better in Mexico. The government has cracked down in the United States, and it's pretty much for every 1 Mexican that comes to the United States, 1 will return home. Sometimes you'll find out people will do this again and again. I met a man who lived in a rural state in Mexico, and even though it turns out that schooling is free in Mexico, you need uniforms, which are not free, and you need books, which are not free. So every year he would go to the United States for 6 weeks, make enough money so his kids could go to school, and then he would come back. So it was, migrate, return home, migrate again, return home again, repeat, repeat. Now, one of the things that we see, if we look at who winds up migrating, especially from a country like Mexico, if the vertical axis here represents the number of people, there are 2 things we can note about the distribution of income in the United States and Mexico. In the United States, the distribution of income is more equal than in Mexico. That's really a true fact. Mexico does have a more unequal distribution of income. The other fact is that, not surprisingly, average income is higher in the United States. So who's going to come from Mexico? The answer is going to be people down at the income distribution, unskilled workers, people that have maybe only an elementary, a 6th grade education. If they can come to the United States, even if they wind up at the bottom of the income distribution, look at how much better off they are. So that being the case, what you find out is that the people coming from Mexico and Latin America typically tend to be the unskilled workers. So it turns out that roughly about 10% of the American native-born population lacks a high school diploma. If you look at immigrants, it's about 30%. If you look at people from Mexico and Latin America, it's about 50 to 60%. So you get the people that are less educated coming into the United States, a fact that we're going to get back to later on. Now, by the way, if you're towards the top of the income distribution in Mexico, there's less reason to come. Furthermore, let's say you're a teacher, you're a doctor or a lawyer, your credentials in the United States might not be accepted. So what that means is, if a nation has a more spread out distribution of income, the people at the bottom are the ones that are more likely to migrate. Now, if you look at nations, let's say like European nations, in general, the people coming to the United States are the upper income people because there the distribution of income is more equal than in the United States. We're talking about Western Europe here, so Western Europe, so Germany, France, England. So if you're at the top of the income distribution and the distribution is more equal in those nations, and you come to the United States, which compared to Western Europe is more unequal, those at the top can make more money. So, what you find out is that, actually where my wife grew up in Devils Lake, North Dakota, they got a lot of Canadian doctors who were doing relatively well in Canada, but when they came down to the United States, they could make even more money because the distribution of income is more spread out in the United States. And that's why we get scientists and people in business and other people, coming to the United States from Western Europe because they can make even more money. Okay, well, next time we're going to talk a little bit about the legal structure of immigration and continue this discussion. Hey, please check back with me. Hope things are going okay. Take care and stay well.